if
Hmm.
you don't love the products that you
Yeah.
are trying to share with people, you're never going to be able to be your authentic self.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I'm so happy you're here with us today as we have an incredible guest joining us. Miranda Inglis, the CEO of Pure Haven, is here on the podcast. How are you, Miranda?
I'm great, Becky. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to dive into your story and share a little bit more about the mission of Pure Haven with our audience today. I'm going to let you do a little bit of a self introduction. I'd love to hear a little bit about your story, how your journey started, where you are now as the non-tox CEO of Pure Haven, and what that's looked like for you.
Well, yeah, I always say that there are multiple versions of everyone, right?
Yeah.
So there are multiple versions of Miranda, right? I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, I'm a wife, I'm an engineer by education, and a mother, right? And those are what I would say, hey, all of those things that for me, the journey to becoming a mother and what that
Mhm.
looked like for me very much shaped why I am here doing what I'm doing now. 19 years old, I was diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome, with which at that time it meant I went to college and gained 50 pounds rather than 15 and had cystic acne. There were things that were just like self-conscious to me. I didn't think, oh, hey, this is also going to shape that journey of becoming a mother, but it absolutely did. So, went through college, got a degree in engineering. The beginning of my career was with large automotive manufacturer, which is in
Mhm.
Ohio. I ultimately ended up running a leadership development program for all engineers that came in through there. So I
Okay.
had that whole manufacturing for probably one of the best manufacturers in the world, honestly, and delved into personal development. So it was like
Mhm.
personal development and manufacturing coming in early for me. And then when I met my husband, Jim, who I call my silver fox, and we decided that we were going to start a family, I knew in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, I have this PCOS thing. My weight had gone up and down
Mhm.
throughout my life from that point on, but I didn't know how hard it was going to be for me to have children. And that
Mhm.
really is where that started for me. It was about a 5-year infertility journey. And through that, I went to a lot of doctors. I went through to Western, Eastern. You and I, before we started recording, we were
Yeah.
talking about acupuncture, right? Like
Right.
I was doing those type of things, homeopathy. I was going to traditional doctors as well. And
Yeah.
throughout that entire journey, people talked to me about what I put in my body, maybe what I was eating, my diet, things like that. They were talking about
Mhm.
what I was doing with my body, if I was exercising, those type of things.
Sure.
But nobody ever talked to me about what I was putting on my body. And
Mhm.
it wasn't until we finally had my oldest son, and his name is Nash. We had him, and he came to us pre programmed with a list of allergies that was as long as my arm.
Mhm.
And I had already switched over a lot of what we were eating because that was part of my infertility journey, that gluten-free, dairy-free, all the things free, but he was allergic to absolutely everything, and when he figured out what he was allergic to, I just wanted him to sleep. I was a professional
Really?
mom. By this
Yeah.
point, I was in a leadership position. I had, you know, a lot of people reporting to me, but I had this baby who I had wanted for so long, and he would not sleep. And so I we figured out what he was allergic to, and that's the first time I ever turned over a label on a personal care product, because prior to that,
Mhm.
nobody had ever talked to me about it. I knew about
Mhm.
food. I was eating organic. I knew that I needed to be moving my body, but no doctor anywhere had ever talked to me about what was in personal care. And so it was really my son and my want for him, because you're a new mom and you want to do everything perfect.
Yeah.
Really? And so I started making my own products. And
Okay.
I was making our own food. All the things that we
While
tend
working
to
full time with a
while
new
working,
baby,
all
no
of
big
these type of
deal.
things. But I also, actually, speaking of that, I wasn't working full time. I was working for a very structured Japanese company and in a
Yeah.
leadership role that was about you had to be there. But I actually fought for a part-time program for people in leadership roles because prior to that they wouldn't let that happen. And I was
Okay.
like 9 months pregnant and looking at them, I'd asked for part-time and they kept saying, oh, we don't do that. And I'm like, if you don't, I'm gonna have to go.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting because this is where I didn't ultimately go
Mhm.
back, but they said, hey, you can do the same job just in 3 days. And I was like, okay, for half the pay and 3 days per week, thank you.
Yeah.
But Nash had taught us a ton. I now
Mhm.
realize I'm like, wait, I can't pronounce half of these. What in the heck is going on here? And
Yeah.
so I started making my own things. Then by leaning into what our kids teach us, he taught me a ton. We got pregnant right away again with
Yeah.
my second son. My boys are only 21 months apart. And it was at this point that I had many failed attempts at making shampoo myself
Mhm.
because I just
Mhm.
looked like a drowned rat. It was not working. And so I typed in the Googler. I was like, non-tox
Yeah.
shampoo because what I was doing wasn't working.
Wasn't working.
And,
Yeah.
and also I now have two kids under the age of 2 and
Mhm.
I'm working, you're juggling everything. And up top pops this company. And I was like, oh, like it
Yeah.
happened to be a direct sales company. At that point, I was like, if you had asked me at that point, I would have said, yeah, I don't do that. That is
Right.
not for me. If you had invited me to a party, I would have been like, I thought we were friends. I don't do parties.
I
Like that
thought we were
literally,
friends.
I thought we were friends. Like, and I definitely for the any stigma that this industry could have
Yeah.
had, I didn't understand the industry. And
Mhm.
so at first I was like, I don't, but I wanted the products.
Yeah.
So
I just need the shampoo.
I just want this. I want to see if it works, right?
Right.
Because I was very committed already to ultimately what the mission of Pure Haven is. And so I joined on. I bought shampoo and cleanser to make sure because I have PCOS, my
Yeah.
skin, I had cystic acne. I had had it
Mhm.
the majority of my life. I was very worried about what I was going to use there. And I wanted to make sure that my hair didn't looked better than what I was making in my kitchen.
Yeah.
And that's the rest of the story. I became a consultant in the field, which I know is not a normal thing that you would hear for a CEO of a
Yeah.
company. But very early on, I just celebrated 10 years with the company November 4th. I remember
Amazing.
that because
Congrats.
yeah, thanks. My first party, the girl who didn't do parties, the first party that I ever had, it was my birthday. So
Uh-huh.
I invited people over for my birthday, and I think they legit thought they were showing up to celebrate my birthday. And I was like,
They're like, we're here for
and
the party.
I have these products that I want to share with
How's
you.
that for a launch
It
strategy? I
it
love it.
worked. It worked. It worked. Some of those people are still customers with Pure Haven today, and it's been an interesting ride. But that's where it started. So for me, it was really I wanted these products. I wanted products for my family that I knew that I could trust, and
Mhm.
I that was enough for me to get over whatever I thought this industry was. And then once I was in it,
Yeah.
I realized, hey, this career that I had been in and I loved what I was doing. Doing leadership development. I was on that
Mhm.
personal development side, but also engineering. But I also realized once I had kids, I'm like, they're not going to let me step away from this because
Mhm.
I couldn't do it on my own terms. And
Mhm.
I found in this industry an ability to be able to do that. Look, there was
Yeah.
something I was passionate about. I loved these products and I was going to go out and I was going to tell everybody about them. And that's what I did.
Mhm.
And that is where I grew up through this
Yeah.
industry of, yeah, if I'm passionate about something and I'm going to go out and talk about it, I can really write my own paycheck. And that's what I did. I walked away from my corporate career. I
Mhm.
replaced that corporate career income. I did it while my boys were young and they were
Yeah.
at home and I could spend that time with them. And I know that this is an industry where sometimes we say, hey, you got to be careful what you say. But for me, that was really what happened. I saw the power of getting behind something that I believed in and it growing.
Mhm.
And during that time, also, the company ownership changed.
Mhm.
I then after the company ownership changed, yeah, I think I did my last party under the old ownership and then knew within months of each other, I'm just going to keep going. And then they
Yeah.
asked me to come corporate
Right.
to
Okay.
be on the sales side, and I did that for a bit, but then my engineering background and my manufacturing background, what was very clear to me was that we needed to grow that. And we'll talk a little, I think we're going to talk a little bit
Yeah.
about the non-tox industry and why that's important and what we do, but so growing the R&D, growing our capability to be able to do everything in-house, to me that's the only way that we can actually say that we are a
Yeah.
non-tox company. I was over the operations side of the company for quite a few years, and then 2 years ago in October became the CEO. So I've
Amazing.
pretty much done
You've done it
every
all.
job. At one point, I was even packing up orders to send them out of our Rhode Island facility. So
Yeah.
it really is from a passion of trying to understand what my family was exposed to and knowing that once I cut a lot of those things out, my oldest son taught us a ton. I saw my
Mhm.
health dramatically improve ahead of anything that I did. Of course, I had been doing the food, I had been doing the exercise, I've been
Yeah.
doing those other things too. But this is where I saw the biggest impact. And I never realized that it was impacting my health specifically and my children's health. They both sleep through the night now, in case you were wondering.
I'm so happy to hear that. What a journey, though. I love that you've been on all sides of things.
Mhm.
You've seen it from a lot of different angles. And I think that as a leader with a company, like having that multifaceted view of, okay, this is what it feels like over there. And this is what's important to these people. And here's something we need to make sure that we focus on. I think that is really cool just hearing how your journey unfolded, how you stepped into your role. And there's so many things that you said that my journey parallel too. We'll have an offline conversation, but I'm like, I worked
Absolutely.
for a leadership development company. I went part-time after I had my kids. I found direct sales. There we have a lot of parallels there.
Well, and
But
there's a
I
lot of women like us. That just
yeah,
shows that there are a lot of people like us, and if they can get
yeah,
over that stigma.
right.
And I think the other important thing to point out, and what I talked about in my journey, I also know, and I think that it's relevant within this time right now. I
Mm-hmm.
know what it's like to have left a corporate career, put it all into direct sales, and then get an email saying, "Hey, something's changing with your company."
Yeah.
And not to know what that future means for you
Mm-hmm.
is I know firsthand what it's like to sit in the seat of feeling as if you may not have control over that, which is
Yeah.
why at Pure Haven and what we do, we are always thinking about that and thinking about the success of the person that is out there selling our
Right.
products because I know what it's like to not know if, hey, what does this mean?
Yeah.
Is the company still gonna be there for you? Is it still
Right.
gonna be there for me at that
Yeah.
time? So I think that's part of my journey that, I know that there's a lot of flux within the industry right now, but it's
Right.
relevant to
Yeah.
understand, I think, to your listeners.
Yeah, no, I love that you mentioned that. And I think a lot of people are feeling that maybe just uneasiness. I've been doing this and it's been going well, but oh my gosh, did you hear about this? And did you hear about that? And it can create a lot of unrest where you're like, how do I make sure I'm okay and I'm taken care of? And I've poured myself into this now.
Right.
How do I keep moving forward? And so we're going to dive into all
Yeah.
of that here in a minute. But before we do, I want to ask you just a little bit for maybe those listening that are less familiar with the dangers of toxins, or maybe they're just hearing about this, or maybe it's one of those things that you're like, oh yeah, people talk about that. I don't know. I don't really know what the health risks are. I just buy my things at the grocery store and I go about my day and I've never run into a situation where you're like, oh gosh, I got to figure out these allergies, or I got to figure out what's happening with this kid, or I got to work through fertility. I think it's important to share a little bit about maybe what should people be thinking about, or what do they not know that they need to know, if that makes sense.
That's a very good question. I the more that I peeled back the onion, even
Mm-hmm.
when I was trying to figure this out for my own family, and I think that even in the 13 years now that I've been
Yeah.
doing this, it is an industry of toxins. The personal care, cleaning, and cosmetics industry is. There are organizations that have tried to further this understanding. They've tried to advocate for the consumer, but
Right.
you have to go back in time to understand how this industry is where it is now. And where
Mhm.
I always point people to is the Cosmetics Act of 1937. So the Cosmetics Act said, what it said is that anything that you're putting on your body, let's not even
Mhm.
talk about cleaning products because that's still a Wild West, but like
Yeah.
anything that you were putting on your body was not had any oversight by the FDA. And when the reason why that happened then is that was when the FDA was being established and things were happening with it. And you can
Okay.
feel one way or another about them.
Yeah.
And I'm not here to say that they're actually a good way to regulate. What essentially happened from that point forward is an industry that was not regulated. And
Mm.
so any chemical that came to market was it started to happen more and more rapidly. It came to
Yeah.
market with little to no testing as to what the safety or efficacy for use on humans, because the thought was if you put it on your skin, it's not going to get into your body. That is actually not true because
Right.
your body, your skin is your largest organ. It
Yeah.
is actually the only organ that you can see, right?
Yep.
And it things do absorb into your skin and they
Right.
do get into your bloodstream. So what ended up happening was that you had all of these chemicals that were being used and there was no regulation. So it would take years for something to get banned. So things like carcinogens, neurotoxins, endocrine
Mhm.
disruptors, things that are not allowed in food. And I think you could even say the food industry in the US is not all that well regulated. People are awake to the things that are in
Mhm.
their food, but they don't realize that even worse is what you're putting
But
on your
again.
skin.
Okay.
And so I say it's an industry of toxins for three reasons. One, there is little to no regulation. The
Mhm.
MOCRA Act came through in the end of 2022, beginning of 2023, didn't actually get implemented until 2024. All that said was that manufacturers for cosmetics and personal care had to register with the FDA. It didn't say that they weren't going to
Mm.
put toxins in your products. And some people were like, oh, great, this is happening. No, not much happened. And
Yeah.
really, what happened as a result of that is a further consolidation within the market because smaller manufacturers, there's an expense to going through all of that to register
Mhm.
with the FDA. And so a lot of them just further consolidated to third party manufacturers. So that happened. The second thing is we are an industry of byproducts, which means that larger industries, whether they be pharmaceutical, farming, the petroleum industry, the plastics industry, those all of those industries have byproducts that they're selling to the personal care, cleaning, and cosmetics industry. And the reason why they're selling those byproducts is because if they had to dispose of them, they're actually hazardous waste. So rather than
Oh my gosh.
paying to dispose of them, they are
Right.
selling them to another industry that says, hey, if you just put a little bit in it, it's likely safe. And they're selling it for really cheap. And it may do something like it may add a slip. If you want your hair, you guys remember, I
Mhm.
probably remember Pantene, right? Oh my gosh, it made my
Yeah.
hair look so amazing. That's because it coats your hair shaft
Yeah.
with something and it's a petroleum byproduct that's doing that. And
Yeah.
but if you stop using it, then your hair looks really bad. And there's a reason for that,
Mm.
right? That's the second reason. It's a byproduct industry. And the third reason, which really can get me fired up if we're talking in a separate venue, is that
Yeah.
this is an industry that is primarily marketed to women.
Right.
And the prevailing thought for a very long time is that women don't care. Women don't care about their health, or they're not going to pay attention. And because they're not going to pay
Mhm.
attention, they're not going to catch on that these things are potentially harmful. A
Oh,
really
that gets
good
me worked up too.
hey there. Who's creating the laws? Who is this being marketed to? And the thought that, hey, women are not going to care about this. But I've met a lot of women that absolutely do once they wake up to this,
Yeah. Yeah.
or something has happened in their life. I don't, how long? A really good example
Mhm.
is this is the Johnson talc baby powder, like the whole baby
Mhm.
powder, knowing that was contaminated with asbestos, knowing that talc was causing issue and it was a carcinogen. how many families sued Johnson, and they settled out of court. They never admitted. They knew it
Yeah.
starting in the 70s that it was an issue. Billions of dollars they played out to victims of the issue, and then never actually never reformulated, never did anything. And it was because women were using it as an odor absorbing powder,
Right.
and then they were getting ovarian cancer.
Oh my
And
gosh. Yeah.
it's unfortunate that over time, the way that
Mhm.
our country has handled this is like the burden of proof is on the person, and you have to wait until you get sick,
Right.
right?
Yeah. There's some
So
catalyst that there's something that happens for
there's
all of a sudden it to be like, okay, like now this matters, or now I need to start
right.
paying more attention.
And
Yeah.
prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that this is actually what it was. And
Right.
that's the other thing, that the funding for these things
Hmm.
usually happen because there is somebody that is paying for the studies to prove it. And
Right.
when the same company that has produces the product also produces this pharmaceutical that could possibly quote unquote cure it, and they're making money on
Hmm.
both sides of it, what motivation do they have? Because
Right.
when you talk about the chemical industry, that also pulls in the pharmaceutical industry because they are owned by
Hmm.
the same people, and
Hmm.
it is a $3.7 trillion industry that is larger than the US economy. So when you think that, hey, this is there's somebody out there that is watching and is going to regulate this, it's
Yeah.
not happening.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that this is not about scaring people or being like, oh, hey, it's control what you can control, buy cleaner, buy safer. The
Hmm.
biggest one to look for is the ingredient fragrance, right?
Yes.
Or
Yeah.
preservatives that are in things that are
Hmm.
known to be linked to endocrine disruption or toxicity, because those, if you're seeing the parabens and the things like that's from the preservative, or some of the
Hmm.
newer preservatives that come out in reaction to people catching wind that is like, oh, hey, people don't like the word parabens anymore. Let's throw something like
Like,
phenoxyethanol in there, and they're not going to know what it means. And it's newer, so it doesn't have enough science behind it.
yeah.
Or MI, which was another one that was thrown in from a preservative perspective. Those two, if you just cut those out, you're like, oh man, like I'm cutting out the majority of products that are on the market. And with fragrance is a loophole ingredient. It's actually the
Hmm.
only ingredient that was written into the MOCRA Act of 2023. And the reason was, all they said about fragrance is that they had to disclose if it was a potential allergen. There are hundreds of ingredients that can be in that ingredient fragrance or natural, like parfum. Even if somebody says
Yeah.
that it's a natural fragrance, you can hide behind that ingredient, and a lot of companies do.
Hmm.
Even ones that are in the quote unquote green space, they'll
Hmm.
say it's natural fragrance, it's naturally derived, but they won't tell you what's actually in it. And that should be a red flag to you
Oh,
as a consumer.
okay. Okay.
So,
I feel like I'm learning so much here. This is, and what a crazy, like you said, until you're faced with something going on health-wise or in your family, it's probably not something that's top of mind for you. So I love that a big part of really what you're passionate about and what your consultants are doing at Pure Haven as well is that education piece. And I think that's a big part of it. And I think also why direct sales really works when you have something that might be a little bit more complex or needs some explaining or some education around. It's more of a conversation versus just which label looks the prettiest. I'm going to pick that one. It's okay, let's
right.
actually get into the details around it. And I know you've talked a lot about your manufacturing process, and that's a little bit of
Mhm.
your background. So, why is that important for you? Like, why should we care about the manufacturing process involved? Because that we're definitely not thinking about that when we're picking the prettiest label off the shelf, right?
Well, no, you're not. And I think that really is, for me, ultimately, we want people to have peace of mind. We
Hmm.
don't want people to have to worry about this. And the only way that we can do that, and what we've learned over the years, is
Right.
that to actually be able to know what is in your product, we had to make it. Not only do we have to make it, it starts with our ingredient sourcing, because
Yeah.
a lot of times, and I didn't realize this when I was making something in my kitchen, I
Mhm.
actually didn't know what was in that ingredient. I didn't know how it was made. I didn't know if
Mhm.
there were any sub ingredients in it because companies are not disclosing.
Yeah.
So we created a process to be like, okay, we're going to ask these vendors. And because we are buying at a larger scale, we
Yeah.
ask them like, hey, what are your sub ingredients? And they're like, nobody ever asks us that. I'm like, we are, right? What
Uh-huh.
they're like this whole industry standard that's, oh, that's below the line. You don't need to disclose anything that's below the line. If there are 10 different ingredients that are in a product, and
Yeah.
all of them have ingredients that are quote unquote below the line,
Mhm.
turns out they become above the line. And what they mean
Yeah.
by that is it's a lower percentage that
Mhm.
labeling standards tell you that you don't have to put that on your label. And we don't prescribe to that. We're like,
Yeah.
no, we're going to tell people everything that's in here,
What's inside an
what's
ingredient. Yep.
actually inside of an ingredient. And so about half of the people won't even pass our ingredient screening. And not only do
Mm.
we tell them to disclose, we make them sign an affidavit telling them that saying that they're telling the truth.
I
Because
love that.
what
Yeah.
we
Some
found,
accountability,
what we found is that
right?
people would lie. Like, or businesses would lie, or you would be working with a middleman that didn't actually know and they
Yeah.
didn't feel like they had to tell you. With us pushing for disclosure and transparency, that gets us to a point of being like, okay, now we know what's in it. Now, okay, yes, we're going to go forward and formulate this product. For us, through formulation, temperature, mixing, processing, you can get a different chemical that comes out and a different ingredient that is never going to be on the label. So we're testing to make sure
Mhm.
that's not happening. We're
Okay.
also testing during the R&D process to make sure we're testing it for heavy metal contamination. We're testing for PFAS, which are forever chemicals that are, you'll hear there are some bloggers out there that are really educated around what forever
Mhm.
chemicals are. They're in our water supplies, right?
Mhm.
So we're testing throughout that process to make sure. And then we're manufacturing it in our own facility where we know what the machines are cleaned with. We have our own
Mhm.
water treatment facility in it that is
Wow.
designed to take out PFAS so that even that water ingredient, people don't think, oh, hey, water's
It's water.
safe.
Yeah.
Water's safe, right? A quick Google search showing PFAS contamination of municipal water supplies would tell you that it isn't necessarily from a chemical composition perspective, right? So if it's safe, it means that, hey, it doesn't have bacteria that's going to make you sick in it. It doesn't
Mm.
necessarily mean that it doesn't have heavy metals
Or
or
contaminants.
chemicals in it that you don't
Mhm.
want in your products,
Yeah.
right? That is why it is very important for us that we do all of those steps and that we
Right.
do. There are very few, not only in the direct sales industry and
Mhm.
outside of the sales industry, that are actually manufacturing their products. If
Right.
you turn the majority of the products over, and this is no shade to any of them because this is how the industry is, it's going
Yeah.
to say manufactured for or distributed by. It's
Right.
not going to say the name of the company back there. It is going to
Mhm.
say before that. And those words before that are very important. That means they didn't formulate or manufacture that product. So
Right.
they don't necessarily have the control or the claim
Mhm.
to know what's happening because a lot can happen through that entire process that
Yeah.
unless you're asking the right questions, you don't know. And
Yeah,
then
it really is. It's like what you don't know what you don't know, right? You're not
right.
thinking about, oh, what was in the water that was included in this ingredient or what the sub ingredients of the ingredient. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, not
Well,
something
and
that probably the average person is thinking about, but how great that they can trust you guys to think about it.
that's our hope.
That's where
Like
I'm
that's
like, oh, love that.
right. And that really is like what we want both of our consultants and our
Yeah,
consumers to understand. Look, our ultimate goal for you is peace of mind. I
right.
remember when I first went gluten free,
Uh-huh.
going into and around here, I live in the Midwest. So Kroger's, right? I went
Uh-huh.
into a Kroger's, went up and down the aisles, was reading all the labels and everything, got so overwhelmed, started crying and left the store because I didn't know
Yeah.
what to buy.
Yeah,
And
gluten-free girl over here too.
right,
And I'm in the same boat where I'm like, for a while, I was like, I'm just never, I'm not gonna eat again.
not
Like, what
eating.
am I gonna
Right,
eat? Only
right.
fruits and vegetables for the rest of my life? What am I
Right.
gonna do?
And how many gluten-free breads or pastas did you buy that tasted like
Oh, awful.
not great at all? So our goal is
Yeah,
to like with that in mind, because I know
sure.
I know what it's like to try a ton of product and hate them and
Yeah.
then not send them back. But we don't want you to be overwhelmed by this. We don't want you to have,
Mhm.
we're doing that work for you to,
Yes, you
to
don't have
really
to.
understand it. And then we're formulating our products with really good ingredients so that they're going to work. Because the other thing with low tox or non tox products is that the assumption is, oh, these aren't going to work as well. Right.
Yeah.
And we are continuously improving our as in the hardest thing in this type of formulation and why a lot of people don't do it is the availability of the raw ingredients
Mm,
make certain the performance of certain products
sure.
be similar to a toxic version,
Hmm.
right? So we're always pushing that envelope of working to continue to improve our products such that
Yeah.
they not only are they non-tax, but they
Yep.
work, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love this so much. And I love that you're giving us a peek behind the curtain in the process and what people are thinking about and how you even source ingredients. I feel like those are things that, like I said, the average consumer is not thinking about. I do want to shift gears a little bit and talk
Absolutely.
a little bit about the industry today. Maybe what
Mhm.
you're seeing. We've already acknowledged that there's a lot of changes happening and there's a little bit of
Yes.
fear out there right now. And it's a new year and we're starting the year strong and good things are happening, but there's maybe this underlying, whew, things are shifting. Am I where I need to be? Anything you're seeing from your perspective, just in the way that your consultants are selling, how they're finding success, maybe things that are not changing at all in the industry, and what you're excited about this year too. I'd love to hear that. That was a big
Um,
question. That was all the
those,
questions
yeah,
in one for
that's
you.
that is a great question. So, what is happening in the industry? I think that there is a consolidation that's happening within the industry. I think that's some of the big guys are deciding to go a different model. They're thinking that, hey, I can compete in this e-commerce world. This has become much more transactional. And if it's much more transactional,
Mhm.
then why do I need this portion of a consultant or people who build teams or that type of thing,
Sure.
right? That whole
Yep.
leadership aspect of it. And
Yeah.
I think that some of this started to happen before COVID, and I think that
Mhm.
COVID exaggerated it.
Give us a little bump up. Yeah.
I think it gave a bump, and I think that, unfortunately, I think that these companies are missing what has always been a very special thing within our industry, and that
Mhm.
is people buy from people that they trust. And
Yeah.
that may have shifted and changed a bit, but people are craving authentic connection with one another. That
Yeah.
hasn't changed. That hasn't changed. Now, the mechanism and the mode in which it happens may have
Mhm.
shifted, and it may have changed depending on the individual,
Right.
right? That's
Yep.
doing it. But what hasn't changed is that this industry was always one of personal development. Any of us who had been
Mhm.
in the leadership development and personal development space before this, maybe we were in it in corporate,
Yeah.
I can say that myself, did
Yeah.
not realize that the roots of personal development actually come from this industry. Most
Yeah.
of the greats and the people who wrote the original books around personal development
Sure. Yeah.
came out of the direct sales industry. So some things that in that regard, people that will buy things from people that they know and trust
Mhm.
has not changed. What I think has changed a little bit is this whole idea of you hear this word affiliate thrown out a lot
Mhm.
for us. And I always said, even before, like, we have an affiliate plan. It's just the front end of our compensation plan.
Yeah.
You can just sell our
You could
products.
just sell. Yeah.
You can just sell, and we
Mhm.
have retail customers and you can make 20 to 40% off of that. That exists already. It may be called something different. Words
Mhm.
matter. So if people are looking for something, yeah, we've got that. It's our
Yeah.
selling track, right? You can absolutely do that. I think what happened though, especially the companies that maybe have made a decision to make a shift,
Mhm.
they may not have had that front end of a compensation plan.
Yeah.
And
It's more team heavy.
it was more team heavy. And then they felt as if they needed to go that way, whether that are things that are happening from an FTC perspective and a lot of
Mhm.
pressure being put there. Wrong or indifferent, I think that is just what it is, right?
Yeah.
So I think that was some of the consolidation. Some of the other is these companies thinking, hey, I can just do just as well, trying to go out there on my own, right?
Yeah.
And market this on my own. And we'll see.
Time will tell. Yeah.
Time will tell as
I'm
to
right there with you. I'm like, well,
whether those products
yeah.
continue to be in the marketplace or they don't. I think that what you do have is still some companies that are, and I like to put ourselves into this
Yeah.
understanding that the secret sauce to this industry has and always will be our people, our brand partners that choose to partner with us and
Yeah.
recommend our brand, whether they're recommending our brand because they're selling it and they're making that retail commission, whether they choose that they want to build a team or they really want to become a leader with us. Like
Yeah.
that is giving people that choice and it being true that
Mm.
you can make money no matter what you're
Yeah.
doing with us and not losing sight that our what I call field success focus, which is
Mhm.
our overarching goal. Like we're only successful if those people that are partnering with us are also successful. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, I think that there have been some companies that have lost sight of that. And I hope that they do well in what they decide to
Sure.
do in the future.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine a space for our company where we didn't understand that because
Yeah.
I know, of course, it's changed. I think it's changed from when I was in the field and going from living room to living room and talking about these
Yeah. It
products.
looks different
It
now.
looks
Sure.
different. People are doing that differently, but they are still putting their spin on it, figuring out what is the best way for
Yeah.
them to be sharing this brand. And some people are going to living rooms because
Yeah.
look, our products smell really good and people want to try them out. It's a consumable
Right.
product, so that's great and they
Mhm.
can do that. There
Mhm.
are people that whole idea of what would have been a traditional party plan, do a party, share these
Yeah.
products and get benefits. That's working, right?
Yeah.
That still works. It also works to share on social media and
Mhm.
be authentic there. What works, I think, is being your authentic self.
Yeah.
And what this industry has always been is a people industry.
Mhm.
And when you realize that when you breathe into people,
Yeah.
there is such a return, right? People are also messy. They're humans. I think assuming that everybody's going to do it the same is what kind of has gone.
Yeah, the cookie cutter approach, the duplicate. I'm 100% with you that I think there's many tracks to be successful, and then maybe that makes it more complex today than it was even 5 years ago or during COVID, where it was like, okay, all you could do is online. Like that's your only option
Right.
right now. So
Right.
it's multifaceted. But I think even just in our conversation here today, I'm like, Pure Haven, oh my gosh. And I got to speak at your event earlier last year, and
Mm-hmm.
it was incredible. But having a conversation person to person, I'm like, that is so much more than what I saw on the website or what
Right.
by just seeing a
There's all
post here or a comment there. It's a people industry.
it is
And
a
now I'm
people
like, okay, I need
industry.
everything.
There's only so much that you can put on the label or you can put on a
Yeah.
box. We didn't want to be the last company in existence that was actually printing a catalog. So ours is
Yeah.
digital, right? But
Yeah.
there's only so much that you can put there. This is a journey for people. And whether you start
Right.
because, hey, I wanted a non-tox deodorant because
Yeah.
one of my friends was diagnosed with breast cancer and they told her to stop using her deodorant right away. I'm like, why'd they wait till after? Right.
Yeah.
Like whether it's there or it's, hey, I can't find a haircut. I'm already into this idea a little bit, but I can't find one that really works for me. No matter
Yeah.
where you are, it's love the products. And I think the
Hmm.
other thing about this industry that was true before is true now and will always be true. If
Hmm.
you don't love the products that you
Yeah.
are trying to share with people, you're never going to be able to be your authentic self and
Yeah.
share them. And
100%.
I think that what has changed is people's awareness as to whether
Hmm.
you are authentic or not.
Yeah. You can
And
see it a million miles away, right?
they don't have time. We should ask ourselves, do we have a time for inauthentic
Hmm.
people. We want to
Mhm.
buy people that we know and trust. We just got to make sure we know them, like them, and trust them.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. Oh my gosh, Miranda, this is so good. And I feel like we could probably turn this into 4 different episodes because I have so much that I want to talk about. But in the sake of time, just a couple fun rapid fire here at the end. What's your favorite Pure Haven product?
Oh my gosh, that is so I would say our skincare, I'm not wearing makeup. This is a podcast, not a video, but I never thought that I would be somebody that would be like, hey, I go out without makeup
Yeah.
or but we came out with two products that are complements to that skincare recently. One is an overnight firming cream, which I've become obsessed with and I really
Okay.
love it. And as a woman in her 40s now, I
Uh-huh.
feel like that's important. The
A little
other
firming. I
a
feel you
little,
on
yeah,
that.
for firming
Not
action,
going to
right?
complain.
Yep. And the other is our collagen. That is our first
Yep.
supplement that we
Uh-huh.
have. We didn't even talk about the supplement industry, which is so similar to
Yeah.
the personal care cosmetics clinic, like the lack of regulation there and what you're
Mhm.
really getting. So those two are probably
Okay.
my current favorites. My
Okay.
kids don't know any products other than Pure Haven though,
Yeah.
so we use pretty
Yeah.
much everything.
Yeah. Okay. And if you had to pick your favorite office supply, I ask all my podcast guests about their favorite office supply because I'm a little office supply obsessed over
Okay.
here.
Um, I always have this is whether it's a journal, I have two
Uh-huh.
of them. I have a personal
Uh-huh.
journal and then I have what I would call my this is my work. I'm still a pencil paper, write the things
Yep.
down as I'm in meetings. And I have a whole stack of these. And I think these are what are these? These are Lectrum 1917. Like they're a certain type
Okay.
of
Grid
notebook.
paper or lines?
It is lines. I don't know if
Okay. Okay.
it's lines, but it's bound. And
Yeah.
really, this is one that if I'm on the way to the airport and I realize that I didn't have this in my bag, I would turn back around
You're like, I
and
need
get
it.
it.
Yep.
I need
Yep.
it, which kind of feels, but there's a comfort
Yeah.
in it. So
I love
that's
that. I
probably my
love that.
favorite. And I
So
have them
good.
in all colors. And depending on the season, I index them and keep
Yep.
them over there for all of
I
my
love that. I love that. Okay, and last thing, where can we connect with you? Where can we learn more about Pure Haven? Tell us where to go.
I would go to purehaven.com
Okay.
and check out our products. Every new customer, like your first time order, you get 15% off your first order. If you, not if, but when you fall in love with our products
Yep.
and you decide that you want them more regularly, we have a member level where you can earn credits for every purchase
Okay.
that you buy, and then you get free off of your future purchases. So that is a really awesome thing. Or you could always learn about joining us and linking arms as a
Yeah.
consultant as well. That's probably
Amazing.
the best way to get our products and get them into the hands of people that you care about.
I love
So,
that. Perfect. We will
yeah,
link to that in all of the show
awesome.
notes. Thank you so much for being here today. This was such an incredible conversation. I feel like I learned so much and have this behind the scenes look at Pure Haven and loved hearing about your journey. And I'm super excited for you as well as the future of Pure Haven and all the good things coming. So
Thank you.
thank you,
I'm
Miranda.
excited as well. I think that the future is bright. We actually just one last thing. I know that we're getting off here. We partner with somebody to help us ship things out. They actually reached out to us last month because they're like, you guys are the only one in our entire facility that is beating projection and is up year over year. And I was like, yes, like
How good
they're
does that
across
feel?
every industry, not just and everybody else is, hey, everybody's like
Yeah.
down and below projection. I'm like,
Yeah.
people want
On the
these
up
type
and
of
up.
products. People
Yeah.
want to hear about us. And we are still like this small but mighty company.
Yeah.
What I'm really
Very
excited
awesome.
about is the people that are waking up to this and they're finding us because we are one of those brands that's true to the ethos of what we
Cool.
say. So,
I love that.
yeah.
I love that so much. Oh, I am cheering you on. Thank you
Thank
again for
you.
being here. This was such a great conversation.
Thanks, Becky.
This episode is sponsored by CintShare. CintShare is the #1 social media scheduler for direct sellers and loved by creators in any industry. It's truly your one-stop shop for all things social. Join hundreds of thousands of social sellers and entrepreneurs who turn to CintShare for free social media training and resources. Get started today with your free 30-day trial at moderndirectseller.com/CintShare.